Hi, everybody. You're listening to Americans by Choice, a podcast from Miguel and David. We bring the outsider's point of view to inside politics. We're both foreign-born and lived in the USA for over 25 years, following politics blow by blow all along the way. Join two old friends who like to talk politics and had a good time while doing it. Miguel, how you doing, man?
Oh, my ready? God, David, what an exciting week.
The moment is here.
Well, the moment's here. Look, the big party's already happening for the Republicans, and we have our guest to the pod,
Jamie Miller.
Oh, the political
directly from Milwaukee.
From Milwaukee, he's a political consultant and former executive director of the Republican Party of no less than the state of Florida. Oh my God! Look at Jamie.
Nothing like the epicenter of politics. You're in the center of the beast.
Oh my God.
Jamie, how does it feel? What's going on? You're in the center of the center.
You know, anybody who has an interest in politics, regardless of if you're Democrat or Republican, really should have on their bucket list to come to one of the conventions, because it's something to behold. It's entertaining. It's certainly for political junkies. It's that Super Bowl.
Yeah, for political, give me the spectrum between Mardi Gras and, let's say, a midnight mass. Where does that fall? Like
a midnight mass and Mardi Gras. I like your guardrails.
That's a lot. That's a wide margin. That's a wide margin.
For political junkies, it's much closer to Mardi Gras.
Yeah, I bet.
Closer to Mardi Gras.
Yeah, they start and finish with a prayer, but there's after
a lot of fun in the middle.
There's not a whole lot of praying going on.
How many political conventions have you been to in your lifetime so far?
So this will be my fourth, but 2020 was virtual. So
okay.
And so right. Not nearly as fun.
Wow, that's
didn't
so
accumulate
cool.
enough hats, huh? How many hats had you accumulated?
Yeah, I did no hats in 2020.
But this year you must have a nice collection building up. You can narrate your career in hats, I believe. Jamie is also an author, Miguel.
A published writer. That's right. He has a book. Called Political Speeches That Changed the World. Is that right, Jamie? Did I get that right?
American speeches that changed
speeches that
changed history.
They changed history.
How far back you go into these speeches?
So I start with Patrick Henry's, and the most recent would be Barack Obama. So there's something for everybody, regardless of your political spectrum. Probably some you would like. And everybody is historically relevant. Frederick Douglass's "What is the 4th of July to a Slave" speech. Everybody hates it because it's the longest one. They're like, wow. Oh my gosh, I finally got through it, because in the during that time period, their entertainment was speeches. So
and within that, Jamie, how does the speeches on the convention rank with those all those classics? Any classics?
Good question. It's the speeches at the convention are very well, as you know, they're very well scripted, timed, and written in advance. And so I don't know that I have any convention speeches in the book. So, period. Probably the closest one is the speech Barack Obama gave when he became
There is no red America, there is no blue America, it's this United States of America. That one?
He gave a speech the night that he collected enough delegate commitments to become the first African American major political party nominee. And
that was later, yeah.
Yeah, and so it was a speech he gave that entire spring. And that particular speech I put in the book.
That's amazing. Listen,
incredible speech. I give the YouTube clips, so you could go watch it on YouTube. You can
nice.
I give a little one-page introduction. Everybody will love it.
Well, no, a quick question, Jamie. If you can get it on Audible, does that mean that you read all the speeches so you get to do this?
Here's the thing. Like it was a pet project, so I don't have it on audiobook yet. So I need to do that.
Miguel is available. Miguel is available.
If you want,
he will read it for beers. Listen, I was actually listening to one of the speeches today from the Teamsters president.
Oh, well, yeah, that's right.
He gave Trump an endorsement. And at some point, I'm like, this is like the trees voting for the axe kind of situation, because why would the Teamsters, right? But I didn't know if it was being sarcastic or if he was being earnest. How was that taken on the floor?
He gave the longest speech of the night, I think, at about 20 minutes.
Wow.
Prime time, 20 minutes. So it was
well, it was a great, amazing endorsement. It's a get.
Yeah. It's an important speech when you start looking at everybody who gives the speeches leading up to it. And then it's the people who get prime time. And then usually the last speech is kind of the most important. And he had that slot of being the last speech on the first night. And so I think that is indicative of Donald Trump trying to, he's always been for workers. Workers have been for Donald Trump. And so I don't know if this is the tail wagging the dog where the Teamsters, workers, the guys on the front lines decided, hey, we're with Trump, and the Teamsters higher ups decided, hey, we're going to go with what our members want instead of being top down. And I'm not going to suggest that that's the case. I'm just speculating.
No, but that's a good read. It's a good read. It makes. Let's face it. Teamsters are historically endorsed the Democrats, right? So they labor, right?
They've endorsed a few Republicans when they were running for re-election, right? So when Ronald Reagan was running for re-election, he received the Teamsters endorsement. George Herbert Walker Bush won the Teamsters endorsement in, I think it was 1988, but that was kind of an extension of the Reagan presidency.
That's interesting.
And so,
actually, this is something that
in there. I think George W. received his the Teamsters in 2004.
Okay, so this is not a first by any means. Then
not a first. What is a first is the Teamsters president speaking at the Republican National Convention.
Right,
he was the first Teamsters president to ever speak at a Republican National Convention. So it's big. So from a speech standpoint, it's a historic speech.
Absolutely,
historic moment.
And I think, David, it's something that we've been talking about, I think, in the last couple of weeks, is the realignment of the Republican Party and its constituencies. And I think this maybe is sort of related to that, how Donald Trump's appeal has widened, let's say, the tent for the Republican parties into this white working class vote that I think usually what the Republicans didn't get, but like with Trump as its leader, it has, revolutionized, I think, what's happening really in the Republican Party and why he's managed to consolidate such a support from when you think of 2016, where he was seen as a hostile takeover, which is what me and David have been discussing for a few months here. But yeah,
I was talking about this with you briefly, Jamie, how the Republican Party, where the Republican Party was when Barack Obama became president, is a completely different Republican Party that we have when Obama's last term, right? And there is no bigger example. And you can correct me if I'm wrong. The Liz Cheney, who was like the epicenter of the power of conservative power, right before Obama. Now she's on the out. Is she even invited to the convention? Is Liz Cheney there at all?
I don't know. I did see Mike McCarthy here. So
McCarthy was Mike McCarthy.
Yeah.
Okay. Kevin McCarthy.
Kevin McCarthy. Excuse me.
That's I was like.
Every once in a while, the football slips in ahead of the politics.
Oh no, we do that all the time. Yeah. So what do you think about
here? So yes, I think both parties are kind of grappling with what their future is going to look like.
Correct.
It is the age of both of their nominees. From an electoral standpoint, almost anything you can say critically about the Republican Party, you can also say critically about the Democratic Party. And, about, whether it's infighting or whether it's, they're two, we have a 78 and an 81-year-old as the nominees.
Right.
And, so there's a lot of these things that are both parties are kind of grappling with what this future is going to mean for them as the baton gets passed to the next generation.
I was going to say, those parallels are clear on both sides. What we're saying here is actually that the Republicans find themselves in a position of strength where me and David think the realignment on the left for the Democrats is about to come if we lose the election, which is going to be a we're predicting a bloodbath, but we'll see what happens.
I don't think there is a better job right now than political strategies from Donald Trump. I was gaming this out with Miguel the other day, and we had a few choices, right? Biden stays. They love it.
Love it.
Kamala becomes the candidate. They love it.
Bring it.
They tear themselves apart for the next 4 months trying to find a new nominee. They love it. Basically, if you are a political strategist for Donald Trump, you don't have any bad move.
But here's the challenge. And if you're on the other side, and I'm not advocating for the other side, if we're going to play devil's advocate,
of course,
yes, please,
have an intellectually honest conversation.
Yes,
there's
three devils here.
There's a floor to Biden's support. So like if that's 38%, that's as low as he's going to go. And what we've seen after the debate is while the gap in state by state polling, the national polling has stayed very similar, right? 1 or 2 points, one way or the other. But state by state polling, you've started to see the gap grow. Yes. But the gap has grown from Biden losing support, not necessarily Trump gaining support.
Right.
And so I'm not saying that Trump is at his ceiling, but Biden has a floor and Trump has a ceiling. And so as the election gets closer, normally what happens are those two things start to get closer together. So I do think if Trump wins, that they are going to have to strategize and do, there's no business school in the world that teaches a business model where you start at zero, you end at zero, and you're successful. You spend millions of dollars, right?
Right.
There's not a business school in the world that teaches that. And so political consulting is not only about starting at zero and ending at zero, but it's about how, when, and where you spend that money and what you spend it on. Do you spend it on staff? Do you spend it on TV? Do you spend it on, motivating volunteers, or do you spend it
grassroots?
And so all those things are the intricate behind the scenes decisions that go into a successful political campaign.
Well, only a couple of weeks ago, Miguel and I were talking about how the Republican Party was basically, they have no ground game. The RNC the coffers were being empty. Trump put a family member there. And the whole thing was like, look at the Democrats. They have such a great, well-oiled machine. It's unbelievable. And, 3 weeks later, here we are.
And that's the strength of the Democratic Party, is that they are able to motivate volunteers. As a general rule, Democrats tend to invest dollars into their volunteers and door to door and those
ground game
of community ground game efforts, right? And Republicans tend to be, let's raise money and go on TV. Right. And so there's a little bit of a different, I've kind of cut my teeth on the ground game. That's where back in history now, I was director of field operations for the 2000 election for the Republican Party.
Wow.
And the George W. campaign. And so
what county were you at?
I was in charge of the entire state of Florida.
Oh, boy.
And so during the recount, I was in charge of 64 of Florida's 67 counties, and then Miami-Dade and Palm Beach had their own. So if you look at Broward, Miami, and Palm Beach, the rest of the state of Florida, there were 4 of us who led kind of the ground game for the recount. So,
that's
amazing. So listen, talking about expanding the base, you were talking about, raising that ceiling and expanding the appeal of the candidate. So you think that we pick J.D. Vance to secure that white male vote that the Republicans need?
Well, it's desperately needed on the Republican side.
That's right.
Oh, listen, I had another theory. Vance and Pence is only 2 letters away. So maybe they just wanted to reuse the stationery, just white it out, we'll keep the logo more or less the same. I mean, that's money, right?
We're conservatives. We save money where we can.
Exactly.
So, the thing about J.D. Vance, and I'm like the rest of the country, I'm learning more about him, right? I've heard of him. I've known of him.
Let me interrupt you. You call it on your blog. You say you put him, when you predicted which way he could go, he was on your number 1, your safe choice. And you actually named J.D. Vance when nobody was talking about that.
Thank you. Yeah.
No, you actually call it out. You call it out.
Yes, I did. And, he is the safe choice, but he also, in a way, it's possible for him to expand the electorate where Trump needs the electorate expanded, which is in the Rust Belt states of Michigan,
Ohio?
Not Ohio, Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin, because JD Vance has connected with workers, and you saw that last night with the Teamsters. So it's kind of clear that and I'm not intimately involved with the Trump campaign. I don't speak to their campaign advisors, but having been involved for 30 years and at a very high level, you can see right now that that the Trump campaign is looking like, okay, we need to get workers in the Rust Belt on our side, and we need to get workers in the Rust Belt who aren't registered to vote to go register to vote, because that was a big deal for Trump in 2016.
Correct.
And that was to me the deciding difference in 2016.
Well, he suppressed the vote, and we're talking 2016, 2020.
In 2016, Donald Trump motivated people who felt forgotten by politics and got them to register to vote, and then motivated them to vote. And so in 2020, if you look at the numbers, I also talk about this in one of my blogs, but from 2016 to 2020, Trump didn't increase his vote share, right?
Right.
There were more voters in 2020.
Correct.
Both sides got more motivated. So there you saw more voters. And so that we had this historic number of voters, but Trump received more voters, but then Biden received more as well. And so and when you look at the share, if Trump received 48% in Pennsylvania in 2016, don't hold me to exactly this number.
No, of course.
But he received 48%. He won in Pennsylvania with 48% in 2016, but he lost with 48% in 2020.
That's
and
right.
So
yeah.
So he just didn't expand his electorate, right? And so.
Well, I feel like he didn't do himself any favors by going after mail-in votes, which was in Florida. I mean, you will know that better than anybody, right? Yet, Republicans rely a lot on mail-in voting, correct?
For example, in 2000, this is something else that has caught up over time, but I know the 2000 numbers off the top of my head. George W. Bush won mail-in ballots by 189,000 votes.
There you go.
And then goes on to win the election. So he loses election day. There was no early voting then. It was mail-in and election day. So now you fast forward, and I agree with you that it was a mistake, because they tried to. I think in that moment in time, sometimes you get caught up in it, right? You get caught up in the turmoil of the time, and Pennsylvania causes this. The governor illegally says, "I'm going to send mail-in ballots to every voter," and without legislative approval, and broke the law. He broke the law and did that, and with no authority whatsoever. The courts backed up the governor, and as we know, there's a lot of Democrat entrenchment in the state of Pennsylvania. But that then led to Trump saying, mail-in ballots are bad, because in Pennsylvania there was this sleight of hand going on because of COVID, right? And I'm not saying sleight of hand in counting the votes. I'm just saying sleight of hand in going outside of
purview of
work, your scope of work, as governor, because the legislature has to approve election laws, and he changed election law without legislative approval.
Right. Well, they are correcting that mistake this year. I hear Chris LaCivita. Is that how you say his name?
Yeah, close enough. I'm not going to do any better with it.
The strategies for Trump, they're completely reversing on the mail-in voting. Now they're like a validity. It's like we want it all.
Yeah, it's and they need to, because in places like Arizona, where you have a big senior population that may or may not be there, they travel, whatever, they may or may not be there during election time. In Florida, for instance, we have a huge senior population. I don't think that's a newsflash to anybody. And, even by the beginning of November, a lot of our seniors aren't back until Thanksgiving or Christmas.
Right.
And so mail-in ballots are critical to reach a senior population who have, who are what we like to call snowbirds.
Right. You know, like, yeah. I mean, actually, just to finish that, the VP conversation real quick, I was just surprised that, Rubio seemed like such a natural choice for several reasons. I just thought that Trump would have enjoyed the increase in the Latino share that, by the way, David Anaya's original Latino man, the Trump personality really lends itself to that constituency.
He has a great sex appeal to the Latino culture.
To the Latino men, and he could really would have grown. So I actually was, that was really the one that I was thinking that would go with him. Obviously, there were some controversial things because.
And I brought up Marco Rubio in my blog as well, and
you brought Nikki. Can you tell us about Marco Rubio and Nikki Haley, which you brought in your blog, because those are two very.
Marco, I thought, expanded the electorate, and like I said, right. I believe Trump needs to expand the electorate, whether that's getting more registered voters to agree with him or getting more people to register to vote and then get motivated to vote. Right.
I agree with you.
And it's like the old sales adage: who's your best sale is somebody who's already bought from you. So getting someone registered to vote and then getting them motivated to vote is sometimes very costly. So it's easier to get somebody who already registered to vote to come vote for you. And or it's when you get to the budget, go back to my start with zero, end with zero, right? And so when you start looking at the budget of these things, it's costly to get people registered to vote and motivated to vote. I thought Marco Rubio would help expand the electorate. Nikki Haley certainly would have helped expand with women. Her message on abortion, I think, is kind of about where middle of America wants it to be.
The centers. She has such a great appeal to the center. We had a big. Isn't that what is the sliver of the people undecided, like people in the middle right now? Isn't that like a 20%?
It depends on how you define that, right? Certainly, we've entered this area of politics where both sides have bigger microphones. I don't know that they have bigger constituencies, right? So whether you have Matt Gaetz or AOC, I'll use those two as an example, right?
Right.
Yeah, no, great examples.
For right and left, and I'm one of the Republicans. I kind of disagree with the Citizens United U.S. Supreme Court case.
Oh, wow.
If you're not familiar with that, it's
very, very familiar.
It's basically the case that allows corporations to be people. That's why you're seeing the failure of the infrastructure of the political parties. And while it goes against conventional wisdom that we want strong political parties, because people are like, oh, I hate the political parties, right? Nope. But the failure of the infrastructure of the political parties has allowed these extremes to have a larger microphone than they deserve.
100% agree.
And so thank you. And so
No. We talk about that all the time.
And so it's just, so they have this larger microphone than what they deserve for the number of people who actually align themselves with that. So you end up with, and now with social media, it gets echoed. It gets
even
echoed
more
faster and more than, and moderates are like, hey, listen, I just want to go to work and go play with my kids, right?
Correct.
Like, I want to go play in a safe park. And whether you're Democrat or Republican, you want to have cheap groceries and you want to have cheap gas and you want to take your children to the park and play without the fear of being mugged or being accosted by homeless people or any of those other safety issues that families have. And the extremes are the Citizens United case has allowed for every politician to basically become their own political party. So they set up a political committee, and it's happened on both sides.
Yeah.
It also funnels a lot of dark money too. Because when they passed that law, when they say Citizens United was a thing, I remember famously, I think it was Scalia say, "Well, it's no big deal because it's going to be transparency." But like a few years later, they figured out how not to make it transparent at all.
It's not transparent.
That's right. And to your point, it's interesting you bring that up, Jamie, because I always feel there is one thing that is in the Venn diagram between most liberals and most conservative. None of them want money in politics. You tell most conservatives, you ask them if we had too much money in politics, and they will say, yes, we have too much money in politics. And most liberals, you ask them that, and of course they say that. And it's funny how, even though we agree, we kind of like a big part of the electoral agree on this idea. This idea is, you cannot question it. It's set in stone. And interesting enough, Mitch McConnell which, by the way, is you guys have the most brilliant politician in your side in a generation, Mitch McConnell. I don't like the guy. I don't like what he does for my side. But if we had that guy in our side as the liberals, game over. I think he's a brilliant politician.
Yeah, there's a couple.
And he make his bones in money in politics. Remember, like that was his calling card, right? Like, bring more money into politics.
Yeah, so there's a couple of things there. I do want to get back to Mitch McConnell, but it's funny because before there were blogs and Facebook and all this other stuff, one of the first letters to the editor I wrote before I ever even got involved with politics, and it came around the same time as the campaign finance reform, I want to say 94, 96. Mm-hmm. I wrote a letter to the editor, and the editor responded with this whole editorial of their own. And it basically, I said, I think candidates should be able to take as much money from anyone they want, as long as it goes directly to their campaign and they report it. Mm-hmm. And so if you want to take money from, let's say in Florida, sugar is a big deal because of the Everglades and all of that, right? So if you want to take money from U.S. Sugar and it's $1 million, take $1 million from U.S. Sugar. But then the candidate, him or herself, has to defend taking that money.
Report it.
Transparency.
So you have, so I'm a believer in free, fair, and transparent elections.
That's right.
And so during the last presidential primaries, when Republicans had 12 people on the stage, you had a billionaire financing 5 of them. When Democrats had their primaries and there was 10 or 12 on stage, there was a billionaire financing 4 or 5. It's the same, one billionaire financing 4 or 5 candidates. Yeah. And something's gone completely wrong when you have one person financing 4 or 5 people to run for the highest office in the land. And so I don't think you're going to take the money out of politics. So I would rather us come up with an idea that, let's bring it back to a point where it's free, fair, and transparent, and people will, can take whatever money they want. If they want to take money, if you're not talking about foreign countries and things like that, but if you want to take $1 million or $100 million from Elon Musk, take it and then explain to the people why you are so aligned with Elon Musk.
And we both agree on that, Jamie, except that the case that make actually, so as you probably, and I don't want to cite cases because we're not into accurate information here. We're into like a very fuzzy ideas.
You're my kind of people.
we don't deal with numbers here. But there was a case that was with the Supreme Court, which is basically the crux of it was like, we need to have the right to keep donors secret. Because once the donors come, because they were actually, the argument was like donors need to keep their privacy. And when their names are made public, they become targets, right? And this was a case that was from the right. It was from the right, and that's how we end up that now, basically most sunshine laws, most transparency laws have fallen to the wayside. But I'm going to be candid with you, Jamie. That was something that come from conservatives. Conservatives came up with in the mantle of Mitch McConnell, right? Like, let's bring all the money into politics. But they also brought the second part with it, like, what about our donors? But we want to protect our donors, their privacy, which is kind of like, well, you can have one or the other.
Yeah, I think you and I are in agreement on that, and I understand that. I may be disagreeing with the majority within my party, but
that's correct.
I also, I'm a big believer, if you read the blog, in conducting the will of the majority while protecting the rights of the minority.
Exactly. That's very important. The second part is as important as the first one.
Absolutely. And so in this particular instance, within my party, I'm the minority.
We protect your rights, man. We hope to keep having a voice.
Well, look, guys, as we're having a nice kumbaya moment, let's move on to something. You were talking about Nikki Haley. Nikki Haley at the beginning of the convention yesterday, as of yesterday, we were told that she wasn't going to show up. She wasn't invited, but I believe she's speaking tonight at the convention, correct? Am I wrong, Jamie?
She is.
Okay, so then, well, that's let's just say this. That's surprising. That's a little bit of a shock. That's cool. Me and David always, when things like this happen, we go, well, nothing happens without a reason. I wonder if Nikki got a little job in the next Trump administration. Have you heard of any backroom deals or anything going on, or are we just making peace?
I don't think that there's a quid pro quo going on with any of these candidates right now or any of these speakers at the convention
Okay.
mainly because if you
What about a nudge and a wink? No quid for quo, but nudge and a
And
wink.
by the way, Jamie, we'll just say this, when Obama took it from Hillary, I mean, there was a little bit of a, don't worry, I got you when I get there. So, I mean,
Yeah.
this is politics,
No, I'm not going to suggest that
Nothing
there's
nefarious.
but you still, I don't think anybody's measuring curtains yet.
Okay.
And so,
Well, you should be, but
not that people don't have a plan, right? You have kind of a plan, and I'm sure there's a list, and there's names, and there's multiple names for multiple positions, but you don't, because if it comes out, then that becomes the story, right? Like,
Right.
you're already,
Oh yeah, of course.
already, so as a general rule, while there's probably a very tight knit group of people of maybe 3 to 5 who have a list that has real names on it for different positions, the people on those lists are not privy to that yet.
no, I
Oh,
mean, it
no,
goes
not at all.
go
It's
back to
politics.
Lincoln's team of rivals, like it's, you end up with the guys who ran with you all in your administration. It's a good thing. It's good talent. But David, were you going to say something there? Because I was going to flourish with one more thing.
I was going to say something about Mitch McConnell.
Oh, yes, go ahead.
So
Please.
I agree with you. I think on your side, you have a generational historic politician in Nancy Pelosi.
Oh, yeah.
Who is
We
brilliant.
say that last week. We say
And
that
who is
last
brilliant.
week.
And you can still see the power of Nancy Pelosi when Biden had his debate problems, and she came out. She didn't call for him to step down, but she kind of said, "Hey, we need to wait and see." And it was when she kind of said that these other folks said, "Okay." But
Miguel has a great take on that.
Well, no, the boy's going to eat his soup when he finishes eating his soup. It's okay. He's going to make the right decision.
Soup.
That's okay. He's going to make the good decision.
He's going to stay on that chair until he eats his soup. It's not a big deal.
He's going to make a good decision. That's okay. But anyways, Jamie, no, absolutely. 100, talking about, generational parallels right there,
Yeah. And so Mitch McConnell is on the Republican side, but it's funny because when he was mentioned last night, I won't say that he got booed by everybody in the convention, but there were
I was going to ask you,
there were people who booed him, and and there was one near me, and I just said, we don't get those U.S. Supreme Court justices without Mitch McConnell. And, I cannot understand why anyone would boo Mitch McConnell. They're booing him over petty something or another of.
What is it, Jamie? What is it? I don't understand. Like, go ahead, W.
Do you think that Donald Trump had any idea what the Supreme Court or the Federalist Society was in 2016? It's not for nothing, but he wasn't too prepared, right? This was engineered by Mitch McConnell.
I had the opportunity in 2015. Donald Trump spoke in Sarasota, Florida. And I had a friend of mine who was close to Donald Trump. He said, "Hey, will you, I'll pay you some money. We'll go, can you do advance for him?" And I'm like, "Don't pay me," because I was working for, not in politics. I was like, I don't want to show up on anybody's report, but I'll do it, right? I'll do it as a friend. And so I did. And so out of that, I had the opportunity to speak with Donald Trump for about 30 or 40 minutes. And I will say that he was the opposite of unprepared. And I have.
You think he was very prepared?
I thought he was very prepared.
Okay.
I'll tell you, I've worked for Newt Gingrich's presidential campaign. He's probably the smartest man I've worked for.
Sure.
There's another guy I like to say who is probably one of the smartest people I've had political conversation with. His name's Dr. Julio Gonzalez in Sarasota. He ran for Congress, but super intelligent guy. And Donald Trump was probably number 3, probably one of the most intellectual conversations I've had with somebody.
Wow.
In the 30 minutes that I had with him. It was take it for what it was. It was 30 minutes.
No.
But we were talking about elections. We were talking about Florida a lot like we are today. And we were talking about absentee ballots, in fact. And the thing that impressed me about that conversation with him and absentee ballots is that every answer I gave him led to another logical question. It wasn't just like, these theoreticals or whatever. He's like, okay, so if that happens, then does this happen or does that happen? I'm like, okay, well then this happens. Okay, well then this and this happens. then the third thing, and
Perfectly engaged.
super logical, intellectual conversation. And so I wasn't expecting that in 2015 about him and being that aware. I mean, I've talked to a lot of people who have been around a long time who do not have that type of awareness.
Or curiosity,
About
maybe.
the intricacies of things like mail-in ballots. And so
that's interesting. That's interesting. I gotta confess, that's not a perception we get.
That's
from
a hot take.
left.
That's a hot
so
take
it
for us.
No, take it. Like I said, take it for what it's worth. You know, I've had one.
I take your word for it. I take your word for it. Yeah.
But it is my experience with them, and I was impressed, and I don't mind sharing that.
So glad you did.
Yeah,
I think we're talking about Mitch McConnell and just giving credit to Mitch McConnell for being the architect of, I think, the victory. I mean, listen, I had all kind of issues about he holding up on that seat.
I can see where you
every kind of issue with that, right? But in the sense
I'm on the side, I loved it.
Sure. But as I say, I just wish the guy worked for me. I just wish Mitch McConnell was our guy. That's all.
Yeah.
So listen, that was crazy to me. But boy, wasn't that the key to really bring all those evangelicals, to bring all these constituents, to really make people go past the faults that they were seeing on Trump and really basically put Trump in power, and they making as effective as he was. He owes a lot of that to Mitch McConnell. So the fact that now, as you say, that I don't know what the differences are right now, but that Mitch McConnell is on the outs, it makes no sense whatsoever.
No sense
whatsoever. And he should be.
And it's interesting because you bring up, in 2016, he really, and that's why he picked Pence, was to kind of solidify his right flank. Religious right flank specifically. And yet in this platform, he's moderated.
Right.
And so,
yes. Well, I don't know. I would say Vance is to the right of Trump.
No, I was talking about the platform. The platform of the party, where they kind of say, okay, we're not going to talk about abortion because that belongs in the states. So there's some other things that red meat conservatives are upset with the platform. I'm not going to think of them right this second. If you have them in front of you, you might have them. But the platform that Donald Trump has supported has been a little bit controversial. But the fear when he started coming in 2015 was from conservatives that he wasn't conservative enough. Now the conservatives loved him, and now it's like, okay, now. So it's kind of so it'll be interesting, 10 years from now, people writing the case study on the transformation of Donald Trump and even potentially the effect that Saturday's assassination attempt had on him. And the thing that really kind of impressed me about last night when Donald Trump came to the convention was that there seemed to be a humility and an emotion to him publicly that I saw in the room for 30 minutes, but the public never saw, right? So if in fact, I can't imagine going through something like that and it not changing you. And it's, I really would encourage you to go read the blog, because it's not me, it's not my words, it's my wife's words, because she was,
I will.
Our seats were directly behind the president, and we were in the front row of the balcony right behind the president. And
when on Pennsylvania? In Pennsylvania?
No, the convention.
At the convention last night.
At the convention. Okay.
Yeah. So we're looking at the back of Donald Trump's head, and I look over and my wife is almost crying. She literally has tears in her eyes, and she's writing something on Facebook. And I'm like, "Baby, are you okay?" And she's like, "Don't talk to me. I'm writing." And she literally has this very emotional kind of, it hit her really hard and emotional. She's like, just 48 hours ago, a man was trying to blow the back of this head out that I'm looking at.
Yeah.
And here he is, brave enough to sit in a stadium of 20,000 people with us sitting behind him. Now think about that.
Yeah.
Like, it's like, how many people would say, yeah, I'll sit here, but nobody's sitting behind me. And he went and sat in the middle of that arena, and her words were that she took that as him being a fighter and him being brave. But I look at it as, I think that, I don't know that you go through something like that without it influencing you and kind of changing you a little bit. We're so close to it, it's hard to say that that's it's still very raw, right? It's, we're talking on Tuesday. This happened Saturday.
Yeah.
And it was.
Well, I was telling Miguel that moment right after the assassination attempt, when he raises his fist and goes 555, it's going to go in history. Right next to Bush on the rubble of 9/11, saying, "We can hear you. You can hear us. I can hear you. You can hear." They want to hear us. That whole speech.
Well, that's a speech that made the book too.
that made it. That made it to the book. That's good, man. That's
the
good.
shortest speech in the book.
There you go.
What is it? It's impromptu. It wasn't written. That was improvised.
No, it was completely improvised, but it was historic.
Yeah,
the fact that you're bringing it up is just a super historic. And good politicians notice that. And I don't think that he pre-planned that. I think that was a natural reaction, because obviously people in that position, staff in that position, are taught to follow the Secret Service.
No, his political instincts were incredible.
I don't know that you can pre-plan that.
No. That was instant, 100%, and they were dead on, spotless. That was a moment that you cannot prepare for and you cannot fake. It's one of those moments that you either react the right way or you don't react the right way. And he knocked it out of the park. Listen, we're no fans of Donald Trump, but I give you that much. He knocked that out of the park. And by the way, and about that somebody attempting. We always thought it was going to be a very confused person who tried to assassinate the president, because I don't think any liberal who understands politics understands that is just the last thing you wanted to happen to your opponent. It's just the last thing. It's stupid. It's just, we want Trump to have a long life and live with a very old.
It's never a good day. It's never been a good day when a president has been assassinated. It's never been a good day when
anybody
has been tried.
Yeah.
It's just it's a bad day for everybody, and very somber, and none of us want to see it happen to anybody in our politics.
Any form of political violence. As we started as political junkies, we love this for many, many reasons, and it's certainly nothing to do. I mean, we enjoy the sport of it, but violence is just not an acceptable means of what we do.
Yeah, absolutely.
This is
counterproductive.
No, it's disgusting. But just let's go up to maybe finish on a up note here. We got the big guy coming to the big stage tomorrow. Yes. He's gonna have, he's gonna, he survived the thing. He's gonna give the big speech. What do you think he's gonna give? What is the tone of his speech? I hear that he's going to try and give a very uniting speech. Just to finish one thought that I had that you were saying, Jamie, traditionally in primaries, as a candidate, you go to whatever side, whether that be your left or your right, your party, right? And then you pivot to the center. I mean, Trump, having not really primaried at all, he's like, you know what, like David said, I'll leave the kids' table for the kids' table, and then I'll just show up at the end. Has not really pivot left or right, and now he can just really establish right now. And so tomorrow will be the moment that he established himself for the first time in this campaign on a national level, right? Mm-hmm. So basically, Jamie, so where do you think he's going to pivot to?
No, I don't know that he's going to pivot. I mean, he's a unique character in American politics, right? And we've had several. You could say Huey P. Long, and go throughout history that there's been these kind of unique people who, they may pivot at the moment this way or that way, depending on the deal. Like, I think with Donald Trump, it's about the deal. Like, if it's, I need to get this done, so, okay, I might have to give up a little later, or maybe I give up a little now to get a little bit more later. But I think he does that being true to himself. Like, he tries to get as many positive things done as he can get done. And as you know, it's not easy to pass a bill. Nope. It's much easier to kill these bills, and
exactly.
And so to get things done, it's the sausage has to get made, so to speak. And so they but I don't know that. I don't know that you're going to see a big pivot. He's always been pro-worker. His policies were positive for for single moms and African American business owners and Hispanic business owners, and we had COVID in the middle of that. I think I think most people, the Cook Political Report, the non-political, the non-partisan, political people like me, who I like to follow, the Nate Silvers, the Frank Luntz, although you could call him Republican, but a Republican leaning. But most of them would think that Donald Trump was headed towards re-election in a landslide.
100%.
He would have won. Without COVID, he would have won.
He would have destroyed. Yeah.
So,
without COVID, no questions.
So now you throw COVID into the mix, and every politician during COVID made the decisions they made. They all made the decisions they felt were right, whether it's Ron DeSantis in Florida or Cuomo in New York. They all did thought was right, even though they were doing different things, right? Like some people handle COVID for the benefit, and some people handle COVID for the detriment. Like obviously, as you say, Ron DeSantis basically make his political profile much better. But I think Trump, the way he handled it was kind of terrible. I mean, what I'm trying to say, COVID was an opportunity for Trump to actually become even more popular than he was before. But there was a lot of missteps at that. Well, and I don't disagree with that. I just, but I do think that regardless of your political persuasion, including Donald Trump, they all made the decisions they felt were best at the time to save as many lives as possible. And at that point, a lot of people, we were guessing. Let's face it. Right?
Yeah. No, we were blind.
So I don't like this revisionist history where people
absolutely
no.
None of that.
These folks were guessing.
Yeah.
And people
everybody was guessing.
I mean, this is before I had the blog, but I did a Facebook thing every day. I did a chart of number of cases, number of deaths, all of that. And I put it on Facebook every single day just because I was bored to tears. And one of the things, there were a couple of things that came out. One of them was, I think I was one of the first people to start using the 7-day average of cases, because, what we found out was every Tuesday or Wednesday, there would be a spike in cases. And what we found out when you did a 7-day average, it wasn't people getting together on the weekend and we had a spike on Tuesday or Wednesday. It was government workers didn't work in the weekend and they were reported on Tuesday and Wednesday. So a 7-day average took those days off and leveled it out. That doesn't mean there wasn't an up and down, but it wasn't here and then back down. It was more
getting up to date a little bit better. Yeah.
Yeah, so there were things like that, and some people handled it a little better than others, but the people who didn't handle it well wasn't because they made bad decisions on information. It just turned out that they were the bad decisions because it could have gone the other way.
Yeah.
No, absolutely. That was a grab bag.
Yeah. So
listen, one more thing. Any speech that you're looking forward to before this wraps up?
I think Nikki Haley's speech is going on right now as we're taping this. So I think her speech will be a potentially impactful speech because she was kind of the last person standing who was a high profile opponent she actually had delegates at the convention.
She has to release them, right? She has to officially release them.
And she did, and endorsed Donald Trump, and so she did everything, but she was kind of the last holdout. So to me, a lot of tonight, a lot of this convention, if it ends with Donald Trump with a unification speech, I think tonight, when you have Marco Rubio, Governor DeSantis, Vivek Ramaswamy, and Nikki Haley, all former opponents, even though Rubio was an opponent in 2016, tonight was kind of about unifying the party and then moving forward to unification of the country. My hope is that whoever is, and one reason why I came on this show, and when we spoke earlier, you're like, oh, well, we're not Republicans, we're a little bit more on the left. And I was like, listen, I want to come on the show to just try to bridge the gap. We're not going to agree on everything, right?
No.
But we can agree that
absolutely not.
We want to have safe streets. We want to, all the things we can agree on. Let's agree on those things, right? And let's
we all agree on prosperity, man.
Yeah,
nobody argues with prosperity.
Yeah, let's push our politicians. Let's push our politicians to agree on the things that we all agree on, right?
Yeah.
And then let's leave the petty negative, separating things. Yeah, let's go ahead and have those discussions.
Yeah.
But part of it, and the reason why I named my blog Reasonable Arguments, not to just try to plug it again, but to
please do.
But because it's called Reasonable Arguments, I want to be part of the solution of our country being united.
Mm-hmm.
And so I want to thank you. I know I'm kind of skirting past the question, but
no,
obviously we're looking forward to Donald Trump's speech, but the being on this show and you all being so gracious to me with your time and having me on, I think does a service to everybody, right?
This is a treat.
I really sincerely want to thank you for having me on.
No, Jamie, this is our pleasure to have you again. I mean, I think we found some reasonable common ground tonight. We had
plenty of common ground.
That was so fun, Jamie.
I think the key is reasonable. This man is very reasonable. I find, I'm always pining on the podcast. I need a Republican friend.
It's all he ever wanted for Christmas is a Republican friend that he can wrestle a little bit with.
You're my Republican friend.
So Jamie, if you want to come back anytime on the show, please do. I know we ran out of time today, but I know David would love to pick your mind over Ron DeSantis for about 3 hours any day of the week. So we'll have you back.
Many things I would like to talk to you about. But
hey, just have me on whenever you have a slot. Like I'm
absolutely
easy to get hold of. So I really appreciate the conversation today.
All right, my man.
All right, gentlemen. Thank you so much. It was lovely talking to everybody.
Thanks, guys.
Well, David, that was so much fun, my friend.
That was about as much fun as I was hoping for. They were a patient man and smart, and
putting up with both of us. I mean,
Oh my God! You see, Miguel, I told you we need to bring Republicans into. We need conservatives.
ReasonableArguments.com is the blog. Listeners, please check it out. An American Speeches That Changed the World is the book. Go ahead.
I never refuse a barbecue thrown by a conservative friend. They do always throw the best barbecues. So
yeah, but they never invite you for some reason. So I don't know. Maybe we should take a look at that.
Let's get talk to Jamie.
Anyways,
let's just hang up.
Well, listeners, this is a little special one here. I hope you enjoyed it and enjoy the rest of the Republican convention. We should be back with you not too long. Have a great day. David, as always, my brother, I love you. And keep on keeping on, my brother. I'll see you next time.
Bye.